broadcasting from under my blankets, so it's quiet enough to hear me. This is Reimagining Hustle, a podcast for entrepreneurial parents creating a life where business and parenthood live peacefully in the same space. I'm your host, Roxanne Merkett, a mom of two, microbusiness coach, and serial entrepreneur on a journey to prove that it really is possible to do what you love without sacrificing all of your precious time. Let's do this. Welcome back to the Reimagining Hustle podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today. I have Natasha Astara with me. Natasha, how are you today?
Well, hi, Roxanne. It's so great to be on with you on this podcast. I'm very excited.
Oh, you and me both. I'm so thrilled. This is going to be really fun. Natasha, can we just dive right in? And will you just tell us about the work that you do and your journey to get there?
Yeah, sure. So my work is a little bit unusual, but I'm just going to start with saying I'm a single parent with two daughters, two beautiful daughters, and my entrepreneurial journey has been through a few businesses. But my vocation at the moment, this is what I'm working on, is that I'm a spiritual artist and a clairvoyant, and most of the work I do is working with parents who have star children and really highly sensitive people, and we go on a spiritual kind of coaching journey and a healing journey together. And then I create an artwork for their space. And it's been a really amazing flowering and blossoming of my career because for 20 years I was an acupuncturist working with women wanting to get pregnant. And I was an entrepreneur then as well. But I got to a point where I was like, well, actually, I want more time with my own children. And I want to have more kind of expansive time working on my own projects. And I also really wanted to start using my clairvoyance more, which I had been doing in my acupuncture practice, but it wasn't so overt. I was kind of having to fly under the radar because I was working with doctors and IVF consultants. So the business that I'm working on now is much more a collaboration of all the things that I've ever wanted to do, following my heart and making time for my own family and my own kind of well-being in that.
Wow. I just, what a beautiful journey to have been on. I wonder if you would clarify a term for me because this is a term that I've heard in passing, but I've never had an opportunity to truly ask, if you don't mind. You mentioned star children. Can you talk to me about what that is?
Yeah. So I guess this is a kind of new term, I'm guessing, but it's usually really high vibrational children, usually really sensitive um, uh, kids, but they can also be adults, actually. I'm meeting much more empathic adults and very spiritually sensitive people in general. But star children are coming in to bring more healing to our planet.
Mm.
And they're bringing in some really high, wonderful gifts and skills. And we're going to just see more and more and more of what they've got to offer in our world, which is, it's just mind blowingly wonderful.
What a beautiful explanation of that too. And I appreciate you letting me ask because like I said, that's a term that I have heard recently. It's not something that I've known for a long time. I've heard that term recently. And so I appreciate you letting us clarify the meaning of that and what a beautiful thing. So as you're doing this coaching, what questions are people asking before they hire you, before they call you up and say, "Hey, I need to work with you?"
Well, yeah, sure. Um, I find that people usually find me through being recommended.
Mhm.
And usually I'm on the kind of path of people who are very, very sensitive. And they're sometimes having kind of issues with their kids, like they don't understand why their kid is getting depressed, or they're not quite understanding, why they're not eating or why they're not just fitting in the way they want them to. And it's not because there's anything wrong with those children. They're just so sensitive that they're just being pretty much bombarded by their environment, what's going on
Mm,
around them. And
mhm.
so the kind of parents that I get coming usually are, they're looking for answers, they're looking for solutions, and they want, just to raise the vibration of their home space, their living quality with their kids, and to have more understanding and connection with, what they can do to help to be really great parents.
Yeah, well, and what a great question to be asking as a parent too. I think that that's so incredible to be in tune with your child that much that that's a question that you are actually asking. Natasha, I wonder if you could give us and this is I'm going to try to make sense of this question here that's spinning around in my mind. You mentioned raising the vibration of your home. And I wonder if there's any particular advice that you might give to my listeners if they kind of have a sense that perhaps there is a child, a star child, like you said, in their home that they are looking to raise that vibration a little bit. Is there anything in particular that you could recommend, just kind of generally speaking? I recognize that you do a lot of
Yeah.
really individualized work, but is there anything generally speaking that you might recommend?
Yeah, sure. So I would look at what kind of colors are being used in the home because star
Oh.
children are very connected to color. Often they're born under a certain color ray. And so, like my own kids, my younger one who's called Ocean, I would create a kind of pink or coral color. That's really good for her soul vibration. And my older one, who's called Indigo, I would choose a kind of blue, like a sapphire blue, because that really helps her just get really aligned with her own energy if she's feeling a bit out of sorts. So choosing color that resonates with your kid is really good. And also decluttering. I would say
Mm.
this across the board, like the clutter we have in our homes also is like a metaphor for the clutter we have in our kind of mental space or our, like our psychic space. So
Mhm.
the more we can declutter, the better.
I am so grateful for those suggestions, and thank you for letting me just, like, ask you point blank. What wonderful suggestions, thank you. Natasha, I'm curious, what does success look like to you as you've kind of shifted this work from working as an acupuncturist and especially helping women conceive and having that be your focus for so many years, and now you've shifted this work into coaching and helping others. What does success look like to you now?
Yeah, thinking that this has changed quite a lot. In my 20s, like success looked like a big home and, maybe a nice car and some money in the bank account. And then as I've got older and especially having kids, it's become, what do I want to do from my heart? What's going to make me really happy? What's going to nourish me inside?
Mm,
What's going to make my heart sing? Every time I wake up, I want to feel oh, like I love my life and I'm full of joy. Like, how much joy can I have today? So success is looking more like something that fills me up from the inside and helps me glow and radiate.
mhm.
And I think having kids has really brought that home because I want them to see me as, a really healthy human, you know,
Yeah.
someone that inspires them and someone that's showing them, "Well, actually, this is how you enjoy life. This is how we can really be very fulfilled and nourished by our human experience." Because I don't know if you had this experience, but my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, it was kind of like, "Oh, we do this 9 to 5, we have money in the bank, we have food on the table, and then when we retire, we finally get to do something we wanna do." Um
Yes.
it's kind of weird, and I
Mhm.
I never really wanted to be like that, so this is a kind of ongoing process, and I have to say that, like, maybe 6 days out of 7, I'm feeling really great to be alive, and I'm happy and joyful about my day, so I think that's pretty successful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting that you mentioned that too. I remember hearing once somebody saying that you can have like, pick 2: time, money, or energy to do the things you wanna do, and so as we're young, we have the time and the energy, but we don't have the money, and then in kind of our mid-years, we have the money and the energy, but not the time, and in our later years, we have the money and the time, but we don't have the energy, and I always thought that was it felt so sad to me, and
Yeah.
so I am just so inspired by your description of success here. It's just so beautiful. How do you mind me asking, how old are your girls?
So I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Okay, very fun. And how do you talk to them about success?
Now, whenever we have a career conversation, like I think all parents and kids have this career
Yeah.
conversation at some point,
Mhm,
I'm always saying to them, just do what you love. I really want you to pick something that you're interested in and follow that feeling, follow that thread, and keep feeding it, like a fire. And, just feel that passion for what you love. I want it to come from within them like an impulse rather than them having these thoughts like, "Oh, I better get a job, I've got to earn money," and the survival stuff. I really want them to be fulfilled enough for it to come out of them. Um, And I think, talking about star kids as well, that is more the future of the human race, I believe, is this is where the star kids are gonna take us, on this trajectory into a more heart-led, existence.
Mhm. It's so interesting hearing you speak of this because I feel like there's just such like a peaceful and hopeful energy as you talk about this. So thank you for letting me ask too as well. I think it's so important that we discuss how we're talking to our children about success. So thank you for letting me ask you that. Natasha, I would love to know how has being a parent during this journey of yours, so this entrepreneurial journey which you've been on for some time now, how has it changed you personally?
Hmm. Now, well, being a parent is the sort of massive job that I was not expecting at
Mhm.
all,
Mhm.
how big it was gonna be. It's always asking you to expand yourself and see how far you can go and, like, with learning. And it's a bit like being an entrepreneur, actually, where you're sort of teaching yourself as you go along and, just, like, really trying to learn, what's the right way to do this and, you know, how can I do this right? How can I do this well? All those kind of questions coming up. But the main things I've experienced is managing my time, like really prioritizing my time so that when I do have free time without the kids, I'm doing two things. I'm one, nourishing my well-being. That's really high on my list.
Mhm.
And two, following my work, like getting all the words, like all the work in, no procrastination, just get down to it and just get it done. Action, action, action. Um, in that short space of time. So it's getting that balance, I think. And I know that when didn't have kids, I only had two things to fulfill. One was my well-being, and the
Mhm.
other one was my work and my clients.
Mhm.
Whereas now I've got to share it into three, and I think I do that quite well.
Do you ever
Um,
experience guilt around it?
Hmm, sometimes,
Mhm.
like, we're doing this podcast, I sent them in the other room, asked
Yeah.
them to be quiet.
You know what? I did the same thing. I always schedule these podcasts when my kids are away because of that. So I understand.
Yeah.
I understand very well.
Absolutely, and actually I do the same, like, most of the bulk of my work with where I'm talking to people where I can't reschedule time is when
Mhm.
they're away. Um, but yeah, I guess there's always gonna be bit guilt. I think that comes hand in hand with being a mum.
Mhm.
Um, but I also realize, like, the gifts that I'm giving them and to myself, this is two ways that we're both creating something together and, I think that far outweighs any sort of feelings of inadequacy or kind of wondering if I'm doing the wrong thing.
Mm, I love that perspective too of just kind of weighing out the guilt, right? It's so true. I mean,
Yeah.
just to be able to find peace and space. And the thing that I tell myself often is like, of course, I feel guilty, right? Because I feel like I should be spending all the time doing all the things, which is impossible. But when I'm prioritizing the things that are really important to me, I'm giving my kids permission to do the same. And so
Yeah.
I feel like you've just described that idea to us so beautifully. What do you wish people knew about being a parent and an entrepreneur, especially from where you come from such a heart-led and a soul-led space of entrepreneurship? What do you wish people knew about running in these 2 worlds at the same time?
Um, well, I think that the main thing that strikes me is that we can be as creative as we wanna be. Um,
Mm,
we can create our own schedule, we can create how we're gonna do it, we can create what we're gonna focus on, who we're gonna work with. So there's a lot of freedom and a lot of choice. I
mhm,
mean, obviously there can be a sort of, a kind of driving force, that's thinking that we've got to get this done or, but that's going to come in any work.
mhm,
That's, whether we're being employed or working for ourselves. So I would say having this creative palette that we can just choose how we want to spend our energy, who we want to spend it with. And then we can really make really good discernment and decisions about what's the best way to, what's the best place to place our energy into to make it work for us. Um, yeah, I hope that's covered it.
yeah, no, it is I feel like you're giving me permission to let my brain kind of explore this idea a little bit more, and I'm just I've your words are just so beautiful, so thank you for that inspiration. Natasha, I wanna ask you a question around the name of this podcast, and I'll give you a little background so that you understand where the question is coming from. when I first started my entrepreneur journey, I was not a parent. And I loved the hustle culture. Like, it felt so good to me, right? That go, 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 hustle, 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 like put in everything and just, when you stop, business stops, that sort of idea felt really, really good to me. Like I was accomplishing a lot. And then I had my first child and my whole world stopped as it does when you have your first child. And I have realized that that idea of hustle is actually quite toxic, and so I've been on a quest to reimagine what this idea of hustle looks like since then. And so I would love to know, how do you reimagine this concept of hustle?
Yeah, I love this because I'm a daughter of an 80s mum who was like shoulder pad wearing, red car driving, worked in like really high up in was a kind of director of this global company. And was at work all the time basically.
Mhm.
And the epitome of that hustle energy. And
Yes.
it can be quite addictive, can't it? Because it's
Yeah.
this adrenaline kind of pumping, like you're on a treadmill, like fast, fast.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and it's very yang. And so I kind of noticed that I'm quite sort of yin and yang based because obviously I have a training in Chinese medicine.
Right.
Um, but when I had my daughters, giving birth, you do somehow like just initiate into this more deeper feminine, this juicy, feminine holding, nourishing nature. And what I'm really interested in is women entrepreneurs who are balancing that yin and that yang, like filling themselves up with energy, holding energy, rather than just spending it all the time.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the authors that I'm really keen on reading, is Denise Duffield Thomas,
Oh,
and
yes, I
she
love
wrote
her.
something called Chillpreneur, and so I
Mhm.
love that. That's just, if we could sit in a hammock and just, like, laze around
Mhm.
all day and money would come into our bank accounts, that would be fantastic. So I'm
Yes.
I'm looking at this sort of balance, like how I can nourish myself, how I can stay in balance, and my energy will attract in what I need, that there's a universal flow of energy,
Mhm.
and that does equate into money. Um, and
Yeah.
that we can receive that and we can actually work with that, in a really conscious way and get what we need.
Mhm. What a great way to reimagine it. Do you mind explaining to me a little bit more about this concept of yin and yang energy?
Yeah. So, in Chinese medicine, we have the yin and we have the yang. Do you know that little symbol
Yeah,
that a lot of people know?
I'm familiar with the symbol, but it's kind of one of those things that I feel like, we see it so often that I don't really think about it.
Yeah, it's like, what does it mean? Well, it's basically the feminine. It's the opposites. It's a dynamic, opposing and working together opposites that are flowing from one to the other always. And
Mhm.
so our modern world in Europe and probably America too is very yang driven. It's this kind of hustle culture,
Mhm.
adrenaline, and we see it as quite male and that sort of testosterone led, like push, 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 push. And
Mhm.
what we often do is then deplete our yang, but we also deplete our yin. So we end up not feeling like we can be peaceful or settled or centered
Mm.
um, or fill ourselves up with creative energy.
Mhm.
So really, it's like that masculine feminine principle. We want to fill ourselves up with feminine energy, like in the womb. And then we want the masculine energy to then take action. So we're always in this dynamic flow of filling ourselves up with nurturing, soft, gentle, nectar filled energy, and then using our energy to push forward onto what we want. So the trouble I see with a lot of people is they don't fill up enough, and then they don't have a tank. Basically, the tank is
Mhm.
empty when they go to take action. So that's the sort of dynamic flow that then leads to a lack mentality, and we see it a lot in our society.
Mhm.
People coming from thoughts about lack, and also, just not having the energy for anything. So, I think this is changing, like, and women entrepreneurs, I think are changing it, purely because we have to be there for our children, and we're
Mhm.
often holding things, in our families and in society. So we realize the importance of having a big well of nectar to draw on, to feed everyone, including ourselves.
I feel like I just have so much imagery that you've just painted a picture of. Thank you for explaining that concept of yin and yang in such a beautiful way. I love that idea that yin is nurturing and holding, and hustle is more yang and that executionary, and I you've just explained it in such a way too that I'm recognizing how needed both of those energies are. It's not one or the other. It really is both. So thank you for
Yeah.
explaining it that way.
Absolutely. It's a bit like somewhere in the modern world, people forgot the feminine energy, the yin.
Mhm.
Um, but we do need both. We need them both working together.
Yeah.
That's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? Balance is healthy. Who knew? Who knew, right? Oh my goodness, Natasha, this has been just an absolutely enlightening conversation. I feel like I could just ask you questions all day, but I really do want to be respectful of your time. So I just wonder if you would give us some parting words of a pep talk for other parents who are on this entrepreneur journey.
Well, I would say, being an entrepreneur really allows you to build your dream, and you can build your dream in any way that feels right for you. I mean, I've met people that have sewn together all different types of their own personal talents that you thought would never go together, but they have kind of drawn them together and made it something that they were passionate about. So I mean, I've loved being an entrepreneur. It's given me so much flexibility in life, and I have grown through so much through the experience.
Mm.
And particularly if you're like me, and I'd never really liked having a boss.
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
really liked being employed and having someone above me telling me what to do. So, I'm my own boss, really.
Mhm.
And I have to
Yes.
say that makes me smile a lot.
I love it because we can hear it in your voice. We can hear that smile in your voice as you express that. Oh my goodness, Natasha. This has been just an absolute treat. Thank you for that pep talk as well. Would you let us know where we can get more of you? Where can we find you online?
Sure. So I have my website, which is www.earthmotherstarchild.co.uk. And you can also find Earth Mother Star Child, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm out there.
Oh my goodness, wonderful. And we'll make sure that we link everything in the show notes. Natasha, thank you just for the gift, not only of your time, but of your wisdom, of your energy. This has been for me, we're recording this on a Friday afternoon where I am. And I feel like you just grounded me after a really stressful week, after a really hectic week. So thank you so much for giving me that gift. And I know you'll give that gift to my listeners as well. Thank
Oh,
you.
my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Reimagining Hustle with Roxanne Merkett. If you like the show and want more, check out reimagininghustle.com and please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week with another episode. See you soon.